Aloha, everybody, and welcome to our week 4 of Hawaiian History Month. We're really excited that you've all decided to join us, Hawaii Pono'i Coalition, as we continue to celebrate Hawaiian History Month. We've had such great presentations and sharings from week 1 of celebrating our Queen's birthday on September 2nd. We were welcomed into Iolani Palace. We had the showing and celebration of watching the Onipa'a film, and it was followed by a discussion by amazing filmmakers. And then we also had a discussion with Dean John Osorio and other directors from Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge. That led us through week 1. Week 2, we went into Ha'i Mo'olelo from page to stage, and the Maipuina walking tours was such a big part of our annual celebration. And so we really wanted to connect back with many of our actors, our actresses, our playwrights, our directors who were just really doing such great work to bring the Mo'olelo forward and to share that with all of us. And that's how we celebrated week 2. Week 3, a celebration of Ho'ola, health and well-being of our community, our people, and exciting connections that were being made with our presenters and our practitioners. And yeah, such great work from one side of our pai'aina to the other side. It's been great. And then we launched week 4 of Mele La Hui this past Wednesday. And tonight, oh, you're in for a treat, because tonight we are talking about Mua Kākou, and we have some amazing films to share with all of you and some amazing music. And we're gonna start off by featuring Mana Music, a string quartet that really honors Lili'u and her music through a different, by using strings, and you're in for a treat. So I hope you go get your mea'ai, your aina ahiahi, maybe your dinner, maybe some pupu, and you're gathered around to listen in and to just enjoy such a great performance. And then I'll be right back to introduce our second performance that's coming up after our string quartet. So enjoy, everyone, and we present to you Mana Music String Quartet.
Aloha. We are the MANA Music String Quartet, and we are so happy and thankful to be a part of the Queen Liliuokalani celebration this year. So thank you so much for having us. We came together playing this music. It's all written and arranged, written by Queen Liliuokalani and arranged by Dwayne Padilla, our violist, who will be showing you a bit later on the guitar, some other things on the guitar. We got together because of an incident that happened with COVID. And what happened was in March, around March 9th, we were touring around with Hawaii International Music Festival, and which is comprised of Eric Silberger. He's a co-founder of that festival. And we, got stuck in Hawaii. I live here in Hawaii, and they were going to go on and to continue their tour in Korea and other places, but things started to get very dangerous. And so I said, well, why don't you just stay here for a little while until it all blows over? And lo and behold, they are still here with us today. And in that period of time, we were playing one last gig around that period of time with Dwayne and Manuel and Eric, and we decided to just play together after that gig. And one of the pieces that we played was one of these arrangements by Dwayne of Queen Liliuokalani's music, and we had in that moment realized that the Queen herself was in confinement in her palace, only just a few blocks away from us, and we were feeling also confined right as we were entering the lockdown, the very first lockdown. And we were playing this music as if we felt this very deep connection with the Queen, and we decided that night that we should record all of her music. And in doing so, we learned so much about the history, and we learned so much about her personality and what she was trying to convey. We were working out of her songbook, and part of our process is that we would read the cultural background behind the piece, and then we would read the lyrics and the different translations, and then upon feeling what she was trying to feel at that time, we would then record the piece right after that. And so we're just almost finished. The CD's almost ready to go out, and it should be done by the end of this month, and just in time for Queen Liliuokalani's month here. And I would like to bring on Dwayne to talk more about his really wonderful arrangements.
Okay, so hi, everyone. So in our arrangements of these pieces, one of our goals was not only to just play the songs and play them with a fresh point of view, but also to pay homage of the Hawaiian musics that came before us. So this next piece draws a lot of inspiration from the Hawaiian slack key guitar tradition. And for our classical friends who are not familiar with the Hawaiian slack key guitar tradition, a little bit of history about the slack key guitar. The traditional Spanish guitar arrived in Hawaii around the 1800s. Around the 1800s, when Spanish ranchers, the King of Spain gifted some cows to the King of Hawaii at the time, and on the Big Island there's a lot of grass, so the cows just flourished. And in order to help maintain the population, they had to import a bunch of cowboys. And the cowboys brought from Spain and also from Mexico. And the cowboys brought with them the guitars. And the Hawaiians taught themselves how to play the guitar, but they just didn't copy the way the Spanish played the guitar. They took the instrument and they made it their own unique thing. And one of the things was they experimented with the tuning, because they wanted the guitar to reflect the Hawaiian culture. And here in Hawaiian culture, the spirit of aloha, we're very against conflict. Everybody is about the love and care for one another. And then in the traditional Spanish tuning, it's very dissonant. doesn't sound so good. So they wanted to reimagine the guitar with a tuning that reflected the spirit of aloha. And so they decided to slack some of the strings. That's why it's called slacky guitar. And at the time, there was a big secret. Every family had their own secret slack tuning. And in the modern era, there are some that have been released that are more common. This is if I demonstrate the taro patch tuning. So you drop the lowest string one whole step from an E to a D, and then you drop the A string to a G, and then there's a D string, and then it's a G major chord on the chop. G, B, D. So when you strum it, it makes a beautiful chord. Okay, and so important aspects of this slacky tradition is in our quartet arrangements, Josh will play the role of the thumb. And the thumb strikes the lower two strings and keeps the heartbeat of the music. So that's the heartbeat of slacky. So that's the heartbeat. And then also in slacky guitar, there are certain phrases that they call vamps. And these are just vocabulary, just how we speak words. They created their own language on the slacky guitar. And this is a very common. So we got the heartbeat. And then the third element that will be featured a lot in the song is the interval of the sixth. In Hawaiian falsetto singing, people like to leap in large leaps. And you'll hear... So in this next range, you'll see these sounds of the slacky guitar featured heavily. Okay, I hope you enjoy it.
thank you again so much for listening to our music. And once again, it's an honor to be a part of this celebration, and thank you for having us. This last track that we just played, Ahela Makani, features Jake Shimbakuro and Benny Rietveld on the album that we are soon releasing, and we hope to play more for you again in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What a great performance by such talented musicians. I hope you guys enjoyed that. The MANA Music String Quartet. Oh, I was really enjoying it, and I didn't even know that this existed. So, I hope you guys go and visit their website, manamusichawaii.com, and you can find out more about their project and how you can, even get some of their music, and support the great work of our musicians that are honoring our queen and this beautiful Mele Lahui, and bring that into your home. And so we're gonna continue now with our next presentation of HAWA'IKI Rising. It's a symphony. It was inspired by a writing called HAWA'IKI Rising. And I'm gonna let them tell the rest of their story, because you'll hear from the composers, you'll hear from those that have traveled on Hokule'a, and specifically from Nainoa Thompson as that pool navigator. And I know you will enjoy it. And so again, make sure your ohana is gathered here with you. And on behalf of Hawaii Pono'i Coalition, we welcome all of you to enjoy this weaving of a few of this mo'olelo of HAWA'IKI Rising. Mahalo nui.
When I was asked to compose music for Hokule'a, I knew that I had to do a lot of research, and I turned to a book called HAWA'IKI Rising by Sam Lowe. And this was my roadmap to understanding the history, the people, and the mission of Hokule'a and the Polynesian Voyaging Society. And so when I had enough music written, a meeting was set up so that we could meet with Nainoa Thompson and ask for his blessing. And I remember being very nervous. I knew about Nainoa since I was a little kid, and having done all the research up to that point, I was very nervous of what he would think about the project. And when we met him, we had lunch in New Valley. He very much put those nervous feelings at ease, and was amazed at this idea of a symphonic piece about Hokule'a. And he was an incredible listener. We were talking at length about what this project would entail, and he was on the other side of the table listening intently. And after we had finished, he was speechless at the idea. And really, he said it's not his permission to give. It's really he should be asking for the music to be written. And it was an incredible moment for me, at being born in Hawaii, but also as a composer, because this represented a humanizing moment in the project. All of my research had been done away from any individual, and this was the first time I met somebody, a key figure. And it was not until a few months later that I would meet with Nainoa again, and this is when Hokule'a returned from Malama Honua And I was there on the beach with thousands welcoming her home, and it was a spectacle and an incredible moment in my life to be a part of. And I knew then that I needed to really make sure that I told the story of Hokule'a and her crew, her history, her mission, and to accurately, make sure that Hawaii is represented in this music, and to do it right. And I got that from being part of it and meeting more and more people. The level of kind of respect that these voyagers have endured is incredible, and they're very much superheroes in my book, and they are superheroes and should be considered though. So this was a kind of a moment where I then needed to finish the music, and with this kind of on my shoulders, I knew that it would be kind of an incredible experience, an honor really, to tell their story. And for the words, I decided to use words that were used in that welcoming homecoming speech that Nainoa gave. And I listened to everyone's mood, the type of music that was being played, and that all sort of was very, very much in my mind as I completed the entire work.
Build a voyaging canoe. Sail to your homeland. Bring back pride and dignity. Give it to your kupuna and to your children. Change history.
Raise Hawai'iki is a symphony inspired by the Polynesian voyaging canoe, Hokule'a.
When our people started to research and go relearn indigenous knowledge, we found out that the native Hawaiians and the Polynesians, by far, are the greatest naturalists on the world.
And the other thing that you learn is that you really carry aboard that canoe very limited resources of food and water, so you have to marshal them very carefully. Hawaiians have a word for that. It's malama, to care for.
The genesis of the work began when I was asked to compose a work to celebrate the return of Hokule'a from their worldwide voyage in 2017 called Malama Honua.
Take Hokule'a around the world, because you can't protect what you don't understand, and you won't if you don't care.
And Nainoa reminded us when we voyaged on Hokule'a around the world that we were on a voyage called Malama Honua, or caring for the planet. And the message of that voyage is that all of us living on planet Earth have to learn to live sustainably within the natural limits of our environments.
To understand the history of Hokule'a, I looked to Sam Lowe's book, HAWA'IKI Rising, which documents the early history and the beginning of Hokule'a and the Polynesian Voyaging Society.
The title of my book, HAWA'IKI Rising, and of the symphony, Raise HAWA'IKI, has many different meanings to me. Hawaiians would call it kauna, or hidden meanings, layers of meaning. It refers first to Hawaii, the homeland, the mythic homeland of all Polynesians. No one knows where it is, but that's what we think of when we think of where the Polynesians first arrived in the Pacific and then spread out with their canoes to settle all those islands. Secondly, it referred to a kind of common parlance of sailors, that when they come from a long sea voyage and see land for the first time, it appears to rise above the surface of the ocean. So they would say, we raised Hawaii on such and such a day, and write it in their logs. And it refers as well to Eddie Aikau's dream, which was to raise Tahiti from the ocean by voyaging aboard Hokule'a. So that's in it. But most of all, I think it refers to the raising of consciousness, of pride among Hawaiians in the great voyaging heritage of their ancestors, and the fact that they were the world's greatest seafarers who had discovered and settled 1/3 of the Earth's surface, and who had done it 1,000 years before Europeans even knew the Pacific existed.
Many of the musical ideas are symbolically conceived. So pitches, rhythms, the shape of the melody all represent some idea related to Hokule'a, the sea, the wind. In the first movement, before the chorus enters, we hear music in the very lowest register of the orchestra, timpani drums, the bass pizzicato, and a contrabassoon. They play a long string of repeating notes, and this is the idea of a heartbeat, a rising pulse, an awakening of the Hawaiian people. Above the pulse, the chorus sings a traditional chant asking for the blessing of the ancestors. The other main idea is the Hokule'a theme. This is the very first music heard, and it is a series of 4 pitches, and they correspond to the 4 syllables of Hokule'a's name. The shape and contour of the theme are constructed to outline the hull of the canoe, as well as the outline of the sails. The entire work opens with a double presentation of the theme, first in the brass and then in the strings. So what we hear at the very beginning is a sonic image of Hokule'a. This theme comes back a number of times throughout the entire work, and it also ends the first movement.
Miracle of Hokule'a finds that there's 6 masters left, not in Polynesia, not in Melanesia, but in Micronesia. By miracle, we find the youngest, Pius, Mau Piailug. But even the greater miracle was Ma when he came back for 30 years and took every one of us, yanked you through the window of time into the old ocean. And nobody else could do that on the whole earth. That's the miracle. Then he stayed with us and trained us, never went home, never left our side, so that we wouldn't die at sea.
The words of the second movement are inspired by Mau Piailug from a speech he gave to the very first crew of Hokule'a and from lessons between Nainoa Thompson and himself.
Mao came from Sarawak to Hawaii, and he spent a year with Nainoa. And they'd go out most every night, and they'd look at the stars. And Mao would name them, and Nainoa would repeat it. And they named the rising point of the stars and the setting point of the stars, which is key to a star compass, so you can get your direction at sea.
The orchestration in this movement is symbolic of the seas and stars. The strings situated at the bottom of the score sustain a block chord. It's a large sound mass that represents the vast oceanic properties of the sea. At the very top of the score, where the high winds are normally notated, we have symbolic representation of the sky and stars. Their music is light and sparsely orchestrated and always in a high register, so it has a very sparkly star character. In between these two instrumental families is a chorus of male voices. Situated above the strings and under the winds, they sing music of learning, music of questions, as they study the sea below and the sky above them.
And then they went out and they looked at the clouds. They looked at it at sunrise and sunset. They would watch the kinds of clouds. They would watch what direction they were coming from, how fast they were moving. They'd watch the colors of the clouds. They'd observe all the different patterns of the sky, and that was the key to telling weather. And then after that, they'd go out, and I know a small boat, a lot, often, and they would observe the patterns of the swells. They'd observe it in the daytime, and then at night, when you couldn't see them, Nainoa would feel the patterns in the rise and fall of the boat. So even when you couldn't see the swells, you could determine your direction.
And Mao did two essential things. He came, brought back our ancestral knowledge and skill and courage and intelligence and brilliance, and he sailed Hokule'a, 2,500 miles, open ocean, first time in 600 years, pulled Tahiti out of the sea, and started this whole process of lighting the candle of hope that Native people have a place and that they're going to find their own way.
Mao asked Nainoa a few questions. He said, can you name all the stars? And Nainoa said, yes, I can. And he said, can you point to Tahiti? And Nainoa pointed. Mao said, good. And then Mao said, can you see the island? And that confused Nainoa a little bit because you can't see Tahiti from Hawaii. So he thought about it. And he said, no, I can't see the island with my eyes, but I can see the image of the island in my head. And Mao smiled and said, good. Keep that image in your mind. The navigation is always from the inside. If you lose that image, you are lost. But if you keep it, you will always find your way to that place you want to go. And that was the last lesson. I know I'd passed. He'd graduated. When I wrote HAWA'IKI Rising, I wanted to tell Hokule'a's story in the words of the men and women who sailed aboard her. As a crew member on the canoe, I was also a documenter. It was my job to record everything I could that happened on the canoe every day, to tell the canoe's story, the mo'olelo, to sing the song of the canoe. And as I interviewed crew members, I became aware that each of them told a story of growing up in Hawaii at a time when their culture was dying. And each of them was struggling with their own identity as a Hawaiian. I found myself recording almost literally a chorus of voices that told the story of the near death of a great seafaring culture firsthand, and how it was revitalized and brought back to its glory by the voyages of Hokule'a.
The fifth movement of Rei's HAWA'IKI is inspired by the words of Sam Ka'ai.
Sam Ka'ai is a well-known sculptor, and he's a powerful voice in the revival of Hawaiian culture. He carved two figures, two ki'i, to be carried aboard Hokule'a, a man and a woman. When Sam carved the male figure, he fashioned his hands reaching up to the heavens to grasp a polished shell. It was a representation of the stars that guided ancient navigators. This is an effigy of how we are after so many years of oppression, Sam told me. Once blind to our past, we're now reclaiming the true history that's been withheld from us for so long.
The music is scored for a chorus of female voices and children's choir. Sam's words are set to the strings and percussion in music that is hymn-like. His words reach out to the descendants of Hawaii, the children, asking them to take pride in their heritage, to rediscover, to reclaim and revive the legacy of their ancestors.
In some very dark days, in the time of Hokule'a, we remember the hard times. We were capsized in the gale, no communications, nobody knew we were upside down. Waves went from 12 to 15 feet, knock you off every 20 seconds.
The last three movements of Rei's HAWA'IKI focus on Eddie Kau, beginning with a retelling of the storm of 1978.
Eddie, the greatest waterman on the earth, had a surfboard tied to the rail. We turn over at midnight, the light comes up, and in the light there's no hope, and nobody knows. In the gale, everybody's perched on one hull, the other hull is submerged. And there's Eddie. You can't hear what he's saying, but you know what he's asking the captain to let him go. Someone puts a black knitted bagger on his waist, puts some oranges inside, a bag of poi, a life jacket. Eddie's gonna go. I swam with him that last time, and he had to go. He had to go.
After the storm, we hear the final two movements, Eddie's Dream and Hawai'i's Pride.
Eddie had the dream that we're gonna go down to Kaikinoi, we're gonna pull it out of the sea with Hokule'a, when we bring pride and dignity back to our ancestors, and then we're gonna give it to our children. That's why he had to go, because Hokule'a was the light.
Eddie's Dream is the heart of the entire work, and it is music that is a prayer. We hear the chorus sing to the past and present to hear his dream to raise HAWA'IKI. We hear from the crew of 78 when the chorus sings and prays, "Go, Eddie, go." And we hear from Eddie himself as he urges us to go and face the challenges presented to us to sail around the world for the future of our children and the planet.
At the times we were most afraid, we could look to him to find courage.
This brings the work to the final movement, and we hear Eddie's own words from his song inspired by Hokule'a, Hawai'i's Pride.
When we talk about courage and standing up what you need to stand up for, that act of Eddie on a surfboard paddling to an island he cannot see is the greatest act of courage of all time.
Wow, what a great weaving of mana'o, of mele, of instrumentation, of a symphony. It really, I love seeing so many of those quotes, hearing directly from the navigator, seeing the next generation. And yeah, there were just so many takeaways. I'll definitely have to go and watch this again. Just want to again say a big mahalo nui to Auntie Nola Nahulu for really helping us weave our programming together for this week on Melela Hui, to our Mana Music String Quartet for your performance earlier, for the symphony presentation of HAWA'IKI Rising, for all of these inspirational mana'o thoughts and words. And I don't know, I keep thinking of weaving, and that it's a weaving of all of these sails together, you know. And earlier today I did a presentation with some friends about adjusting our sails during these times, and wow, I think this is a really good way to wrap up our Friday evenings, and such great great mana'o that was shared here. So wow, Hawaiian History Month and Mele Lahui continues to inspire, and I hope many of you in your ohana are feeling that same way. So here I have some closing slides to share with all of you. And tomorrow we will be continuing our Hawaiian History Month week 4 of Mele Lahui. And tomorrow, September 26th at 4 p.m., we will be having a program that we're calling Nona Pua. So we invite you to come back tomorrow to join us. Some of you will be joining us on the live, and some of you will be joining us on a recording. We're just thankful that you are celebrating Hawaiian History Month with us, Hawaii Pono'i Coalition, and really celebrating our Queen's birthday throughout the month. So mahalo nui to all of you. We also wanted to invite all of you to be a part of our Empower the Palace campaign. And as collaborators, as partners, we really wanted to reach out and support our palace, our Iolani Palace, a big part of our history and a big part of who we are, and really telling our mo'olelo to the next generation and looking to our queen and so many of our royalty. And as you can see on the screen here, we have partnered with Maile Meyer and the Namea Hawaii to bring you and to say mahalo to those of you that have been able to make donations and to be a part of our campaign. You know, the palace is like many other places out there. It's a museum, but really, I think for us, we also see our Iolani Palace as a cultural resource, and it's a registered national landmark. So it's way more than just a museum that you can, you know, go and visit one time. It really, like, just being in on that aina, there's so many feelings and the energy, and especially when you hear the mo'olelo of our queen. So we invite you all to be a part of this, to empower the palace. And, you know, like so many other businesses and nonprofit organizations, we've all had to pivot during these times. So if you can give a little or you can give a little more, we again invite you to do so. You can find out more information on our website, hawaiiponoi.org/empower. Or if you want to learn more about the palace, and maybe this is your first time hearing a little bit about, wow, Hawaii has a palace, and learning more about our history, then we welcome you to go and visit the Iolani Palace website at iolanipalace.org. As always, we want to say a big mahalo to all of our partners who continue to help us make this possible, to Kamehameha Schools, to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, to the Friends of Iolani Palace, Kanayo Kana, Oiwi TV, Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Lili'uokalani Trust, Namea Hawaii, Pu'uhonua Society, the UH Manoa Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, UH Manoa John A. Burns School of Medicine, Department of Native Hawaiian Health, Papa Ola Lokahi, Hawaii Youth Opera Chorus, Kahuli Leolea, Pam Omidyar, and the Noah Webster Aluli Foundation. Mahalo once again for joining us today or this evening for Mele Lahui as a part of our 4th week of Hawaiian History Month. And we invite you to come back to join us and to learn a little bit more about our mo'olelo of our people here in Hawaii. Make sure you visit us at hawaiianhistorymonth.org, and also follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, as well as Twitter. Aloha, everyone. Mahalo.